Hey, welcome everyone.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thanks.
Okay, perfect. So, welcome everyone to another episode of the Legion Academy here. A little bit of a different look tonight. It's not a round table, but it's kind of like that. We are welcoming on, of course, Joe, who's always here hanging out, and we have Kyle right underneath my talking head, and then LJ's to the southeast here, right underneath Joe. So hopefully you guys can hear everyone. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. If there's any sound issues, of course, let us know. So tonight we're going to be talking post LVO. We'll call this episode 2. Of course, Joe and I did our physical wrap up, but we want to talk to, of course, LJ, who organized and ran the event, Kyle, who was runner up to Luke Cook and played a absolutely awesome final game, and I got to watch some of that, and Joe watched on stream. So we're going to be talking about all those things. So if you have questions tonight, of course, fire those in the chat. We want this to be interactive, so if you got questions for Kyle or LJ, we'll put them up. I can't guarantee they'll answer them, but we'll do our best to try to pry that information out of those too. So before we do that, though, we have a little bit of Star Wars news, and Joe's going to share that with us. So one moment.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have heard or not, but unfortunately, the actor Alan Harris, who played Bosk in The Empire Strikes Back, has unfortunately passed away. So we just kind of wanted to, remember him, honor him. I'm playing in a Prime this weekend in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was kind of having I was going back and forth on what list I wanted to bring, and ultimately I decided, in honor of Alan Harris and his work and his contribution to the Star Wars lore and fandom and everything, I wanted to play a Bosk list. So I just put up a picture of my Bosk, and there's a picture of him on set and a picture of him from The Empire Strikes Back. So we just kind of wanted to say, you know, thank you so much, Mr. Alan Harris, for your contribution to the fandom, and yeah, let's rest in peace. And we're gonna miss you. So, yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Joe. I think it'll be pretty awesome to see you and how you do this weekend with that list. So, speaking of Bosk, Kyle, I think you might have ran one at LVO with some success.
Yeah, I definitely had Bosk on my list. He's one of my favorite character units in the whole game.
Right.
Oh yeah. Hey, he's really good. He's a really
Oh
good
yeah.
model. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to kind of talk about three main themes tonight. We're going to, of course, what we kind of want to make the show is kind of as I said, a post LVO and then a walk up to Worlds. So we're going to try to pry some information out of LJ reference Worlds, not anything specific or anything like that, but mostly from a player standpoint, what players can maybe look forward to seeing, and then maybe what players need to do to start getting ready. And of course, we'll ask Kyle the same question, and you guys in chat, of course, can chime in with your own, anecdotal stories about how you are getting ready and all those things. So let me just throw this out to you, LJ, right off the top, and Kyle, you can kind of be thinking about this from your perspective. LVO is all wrapped up. Kind of give us a little bit of a perspective piece in terms of how you believe it all went, kind of your highlights of the weekend. And then what we'll do is we'll transition that into kind of some things if you had a magic wand in terms of what you're looking to maybe change or implement. And I know you had an exit survey, and I think you have some stuff to share there. I actually grabbed the image that you shared with me, so if I can do it on the fly here, I'll throw that image up as well.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate that. Overall, we do feel very good with how the event ran. We had one big goal, which was to grow the event from the 62 player single day event we had last year, and keep the same quality, if not improve on what we did from the previous year. And overall, I do feel like we achieved that goal. In terms of raw numbers, we had 62 seats filled last year, and we had in total, when you count all the events and all the seats, we had 195 sold this year. So, I mean, we tripled what we did before, which is great to see and a great indicator of how the community is growing. We had large growth in other areas just in terms of how many total events we were able to run. The demographics changed a little bit, and I think overall for the positive. And, we were able to run a very unique event that we hadn't done previously in the Legion circuit in terms of the, 2 huge days into that top 8 single elimination. We've done that on a smaller scale, but to replicate it here at a bigger scale was, of course, very cool. Again, we were very happy with how the way the weekend ended up. And we have some very positive survey results that kind of back that up as well, which I think is always nice to see that kind of data too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I know you guys, all three of you guys here were players, so I'm very interested to continue to hear your experiences, and kind of talk about how we can maybe keep the good and refocus some of the stuff that you thought could have been changed into a continually positive experience for 2021. I know I had mentioned that next year is again going to be at Bally's. We do have dates: the 29th, 30th, and 31st of January is LVO 2021. So, book those flights now.
Yeah.
Because we're going to sell out.
Definitely could save a lot of money if you book them now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, Kyle, you are a guest here as well as LJ, so it's only polite if we let you answer first.
Yeah, so I really liked this event. I went to last year's LVO also. I think my main thing that I took away was getting to play such high caliber, high quality players, and people that I had seen in the World stream. Even like I got to play Lupo and Kish, and eventually Luke Cook, and that was just a real joy for me to be able to get to test my mettle against those guys. I think I like this event more than last year, just the sheer size of it, and the tables were absolutely stunning. I took pictures at every single one I was at, and I'm excited for next year. I'll definitely be there, and if I had to change one thing, is that I hope that next year that LVO will incorporate us into the main hall, because we deserve to be there.
Yeah, and I will say, okay, the only reason why we weren't this year is because we did too well. And I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but it's true. I talked to Reese about it because I told him last year, I said I liked Skyview. It was cool in some ways, and it gave me really good control over the event because I didn't have to worry about a big crowded floor, and everybody was so close. But then we added on Saturday, and we sold it out almost right away. And that's why they moved us over there, so we didn't have to move around between Friday, Saturday, and then back to the same place on Sunday. But I did indicate that, that is our intention for next year. There's some other target numbers I could talk about later as far as what we want next year's event to look like. But the big, theme that I pushed with Frontline Gaming and Reese, who's in charge of them, was that we better be on the main floor next year or I'm not going to do it. That's the ultimatum I gave him,
Nice.
And that tends to be a pretty good bargaining chip. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be on the main floor next year.
Nice.
All right, Joe. How about you? You can go. You can go next. Kind of your. I mean, we talked a little bit about mostly our player experience, but what was your big takeaways, or if you had the magic wand to kind of change things?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the event. I thought it was awesome. The tables looked great, so that was, that's like one of the big things for me. If I see nice looking tables, I'm happy. And they certainly were excellent. The crowd was great. I thought it was kind of nice to not be on the main floor, just because I felt a little more comfortable, like leaving my stuff around, walking away, coming back. I knew like none of the Legion guys were gonna mess with it. Whereas if you're on the main floor, I guess you're just exposing yourself to more traffic. Not that really matters, but it was kind of nice. In terms of like how the event was run, I thought it was great. I could always like see the screen. I could hear everything that the judges were saying. I never felt like if I needed a judge call, it took a super long time or anything. So that was cool. It was really nice to be able to like, especially for like the more casual events, like the team tournament, it was nice that there was like access to a bar. We were we were having some drinks and stuff during the team tournament, having a good time, so that was nice. I guess the my only like downside, it's not even really a downside, was I felt like the year one swag bag was more interesting. Uh, I know that like FFG kind of has a hand in like not allowing as much swag to be handed out. It was cool though to like in the first year to get like a little goodie bag when we registered, and we certainly got like a nice one this year too. But there was definitely like probably more third party vendors involved the first time around. But either way, it's not like a big deal. I thought the event was still like amazing. So
Yeah, that's almost the problem with being more legit this year than we were last year. Last year, the whole thing kind of took FFG by surprise, and we grew very quickly in a short amount of time, and it all kind of came together, and we were able to just kind of throw stuff on there. Then the only downside about throwing on the mats and the custom models and stuff like that is that then I go and I get chewed out because I did that, and I will get chewed out every time if it means you guys get more swag, because they need people to be the in-between on these events and run them. So they're never going to tell somebody, okay, you can't run an event again because you gave out a custom Vader sculpt.
right,
But that definitely factored into this year, and I wanted to give people I love throwing swag at people. That's the best part of running these events, is I just give them out like Oprah. But with this year, we did kind of change the way we gave stuff out a little bit, because we did want to encourage people to actually stay and at least play one game. I was a little worried that people would show up, get a swag bag, but then dip before the first game started. And so that was on purpose a little bit, but having that feedback is really important. So I am glad you said it. Don't take it as a criticism.
for sure.
Sure.
Okay.
We seem to have lost Kyle there for a minute, so hopefully he is able to jump back in. We didn't kick him out. We really did want to hear more from him, so we'll see what happens there, and I'll try to sort that out on our end. I'm not sure if it's here or if it's something with Kyle, but we'll get him back. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the event. I think I kind of liked a lot of things about year one. I liked the venue that we were at in year one for much of the same reasons that Joe mentioned, that we were kind of our own little event. There was enough Legion players, so like sometimes when you get in a room or that hall downstairs, it's so loud. There's so many things going on that it's almost a distraction, especially if you're kind of like backed with a game that's not the game that you're playing. Hello, Kyle. He's back. So it's a little bit of a distraction. So I really like I like the fact that we were in there with Legion. Selfish side note, I also like that we were in there with Flames of War, because that's the game system that I played for 10 years before I came to Legion. So it was cool. I was actually catching up with people that I had been playing war games with for 10 years plus. So that was cool. I liked how much room we had in there. I liked all that. I did find that one of the things that it's tough to have tables end on end, but I really found that I was a bit cramped in terms of the physical space. No one was trying to block any aisles, but I was like at the same time trying to like share chairs besides people. Nobody wanted to sit and play, because again that kind of stopped people from moving, and that's just a logistics thing. That's not a real knock or anything like that. I thought the judges were fantastic. I tried to tell every single judge that I saw on the weekend that I really appreciated the responsiveness of them. Yelling judge and having somebody there within a few seconds. They were also we're getting a comment here, LJ, not sure if you can do anything about this, but turn down the temperature next year.
Yeah, I threw up the chat on the side so I could see it. I think one of the first things I put at the top of the survey was that there was things that are totally out of my control,
Right,
because
yeah.
I don't own Bally's Casino, and
Right.
I did make several calls to AV to have them help us with that, because they knew the ballrooms better. But that's going to be one of the benefits about going to Rio in 2022, is that, according to Reese, we're going to have a lot more control over our environment, and we'll be able to mess with stuff that I previously have not been able to mess with. So getting a little more space in between the tables and being able to affect the AC, which are very valid points you guys are bringing up right now. Hopefully stuff that will finally be under my purview. Actually, I believe in Rio 2, the reason why they're doing it is because we won't have to split up in 3 different places: Skyview, the Las Vegas Ballroom, and the main floor. So in 2022, it's highly possible we might be in our own room, but our own room is next door to the big room or something like that. So we can still be on the main floor, quote unquote, where people will come visit us and hang out with us and see what our game is about without having to be in that environment where you can't hear the person next to you talking.
Fair. And I think we got to be careful what we wish for too, because more gamers equals more gamer funk, and it's actually it works on a logarithmic scale as well. So Thursday through Sunday gets increasingly more intense. So I'm okay if we're not on main floor, but like Joe, I think as much as we don't come for prizes, it is nice to kind of have that special recognition and kind of getting things at these special events, to get things that are special that you can't get elsewhere, I think is one of the cool things. At LVO, obviously, the poker chips and various things that you can get, the cool like holographic tokens that we got, or not tokens, but you know what I mean, the special holographic markers we got the first year. That was really cool as well. I also think that it'd be a good opportunity, if permitted, where people who have like either small companies or podcasts and things like that, to chuck around small swag items. And I don't know if that's I feel that might have not been available this year, and for fear of violating a rule that we don't know exists. But maybe in the future, if people can do that, like give away 5 or 6 T-shirts, or throw in some special card holders or things that you have. So looking for donations. And I don't know, LJ, if that violates any rules around LVO, because obviously they sell their own swag. But in the future, kind of seeking to put some things in swag bags, we'd be down for that for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gray line, and it's weird. Year by year, the policy towards it kind of changes. I was obviously able to get away with a lot more that first year because I didn't actually know what a lot of the rules were, and so that was what affected a bit of the change this year. Was that even though we had the kit from FFG, I was only able to supplement it so much because of how they feel about that, the people that run the convention, Frontline Gaming. So it really did. The first year, it made it feel so homey to have so much community support on so many different levels, and we want to try to go back to that in year 3. And I think the bounty system kind of helped that a little bit. It was like a little bit of a stopgap, so I'm glad that came together. And now that we have this comparison between year 1 and year 2, hopefully year 3 we can kind of bring out the best of both worlds when it comes to both. I wanted to get a T-shirt cannon so bad. Don't even get me started. I was giving away, somebody made T-shirts for us in year 1, and I was practically throwing those at people by the end of the day at the first LVO, and that was something that came to mind. Is I got to get myself a T-shirt can, especially with the way they set up the tables this year. That would have been perfect. I wouldn't have even had to move from the judge desk. I could have just fired them off and been like, "Hey, heads up," on the microphone. Next year.
Hey, I think just going back to what you were saying, I think if the bounty system is the workaround for that, then maybe a cool idea for a bounty could potentially be like, it's not a single bounty. It's like the bounty is win one game, and anyone who wins one game could cash in, right? And that way you can like distribute a little prize to pretty much almost anyone without actually giving it out at the start of the event or something. Like, that might be an idea. I don't know.
No, I think you're totally right, and that was something that, if we would have had more time to develop the bounty system, is something we could definitely look into for next time. The bounties came together probably 48 hours before I left
Yeah.
home.
Oh, I know. I was talking to John. He's like, "Hey, can I bounty you?" I was like, "Wait, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, so now that we know that now that we have a good system for that, I think you'll see a very positive change that will alleviate both potential issues and bring back that kind of homey feel we had in year one.
Cool.
Fair.
Yeah, that's cool.
This hashtag may or may not apply to one said John Griffin. So
Just keep
John's
bugging
still.
He will pay up. He's good. Just if he's not at Adepticon, we'll take him out back. We'll take care of
Yeah.
it. It's fine.
oh, I'll be
Well, we might
putting.
have to
I'll,
take him out in a body bag this year.
yeah,
Well, we had a body bag at LVO this year. We'll just bring
Yeah.
it to Adepticon.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
problem.
To Adepticon.
I'll be putting a few bounties on a few people. So I got some payback to issue out. So
Did you have a bounty on you or something? I know you talked about that on your last cast, but somebody's got to
Yeah.
fill me in on that.
yeah, I am not 100% sure where it originated. None too happy about it, but yeah, it was a thing. So yeah, it's okay. I'm still married. My wife didn't leave me, so we're good. It was just a hug. So by a random individual, but fair. Okay, and Jeff's chiming in here that maybe a bounty system similar to the ticket system in X-Wing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that at all, LJ, but I do think that's a fantastic way to do that. I also, I'm not sure if you caught what I was mentioning last week on the podcast, but I really think that the bounties would be nice if they were actually interactive, not necessarily just with the front desk, but actually with each other as well. And so some sort of token exchange. If players had said tokens, they couldn't actually keep and cache their own tokens, but they can certainly distribute them through throughout the weekend for various things. Get beat by someone, you give them a bounty. You like somebody's paint job. Hey, here's a bounty token. So it becomes almost a currency that's only available to be cashed at LVO. And doesn't become something that somebody can leverage in terms of throwing games or anything. Like, I don't want it to get in the format of collusion or anything like that, but just a 100% friendly and fun economy system.
Yeah,
that'd
I
be
mean, the
cool.
good thing is there's a million applications with it, so we're going to keep developing it. The players want it, they enjoyed it, and it's something that you're gonna see in the future for sure.
Well,
Cool.
that's awesome. Okay, well, and Kyle, any last thoughts on any of that stuff there? Did you have any bounties that you claimed? I claimed 2 bounties on the weekend and gave up 1. So
I wasn't able to claim any bounties for myself, but Bosk definitely claimed some bounties.
Nice.
oh, fair, yeah.
Nice.
The actual only
stuff.
bounties that count. So that's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, I mean, fairly impressive. So awesome. Okay, so next question, we're going to go into this, and let me preface this by saying that this is 100% meant to be a constructive discussion, primarily because Kyle was directly impacted by the floor rules. He was sharing very interesting story with Joe and I earlier, things that we didn't even have context for. I spoke about it last week, saying that I didn't want to speak for you, and then I reached out after the show in a roundabout way of saying, hey, let's actually get this story. So not the only reason we invited Kyle, he actually did fantastic at LVO as well. So let me not discount his amazing path through LVO, but we've been talking a lot about floor rules. We've been talking about points being deducted and the interpretations within there. Joe's maybe going to talk a little bit about terrain, because we shared some cool photos and we got some interesting feedback on that, kind of related to some of the things that came up in the floor rules. But why don't you just sort of talk to us, Kyle, about your final game and some of the points that came up that were referenced specifically from the floor rules and how that all came to be. So
Yeah, so the final game, you can watch it on stream if you want, but it was a really tactically challenging game between Luke Cook and I, and there are a few points given out to him and I for violating portions of the floor rules. Initially, towards the beginning of the game, I had received a warning on slow play because they had been timing he and I on separate timers on how much time we took during our activations. And it got to the point where I was 5 minutes ahead of him, and I got a verbal warning. And then probably about midway through, I ended up getting 10 minutes ahead, and then I received a point for that. And then towards the end of the game, it actually reversed, and I got behind him, and he got 5 minutes ahead of me. And that's what happened regarding slow play during our game. And then I forget what round it was in. It was either in 3 or 4, but Luke had pulled out an order token for a core unit, but all of his core units had activated, and the ones that were dead already had their order token set aside. And we realized that he had pulled a Special Forces token earlier and issued it to a core unit. And so we kind of messed up the game state at that point, and neither of us were really sure what to do at that moment. So we called the judge, and the head judge, Brendan, he had to look up in the documents how we should proceed, and he took a survey of the game state and what had happened since that point. And we had both activated other units after that mistake. And Luke ended up receiving a 2-point warning for that error, and I received a 1-point warning, or 1-point error for not catching his error. And so, in the game, he had 2 points and I had 2 points. Not that I think either of us were trying to use those as a means of cheating by any means. It was, it was game 7 for us, and we were heavily fatigued.
Yeah.
We had both played on Saturday, moved straight into Sunday. Like, I probably got 4 or 5 hours of sleep the night before. It was just, we were tired, and I wasn't intentionally trying to play slow to gain advantage. And I had talked about this a little bit afterwards, is that I'm a short guy. I'm only 5'5". And sometimes when I have my units, in the center of a 4-foot table, and I'm trying to look down the center line to determine line of sight and obscuring terrain, and if it gives cover and who they can see, etc. All those things that come in with a true line of sight game, it's hard for me to get that vantage. And so I have to look at multiple angles and get on my tippy toes and try to get that view. And I know that played a significant role in, especially the early game, why I was taking so much longer, because I'm handicapped to start with. But, in preparation for Worlds, after receiving that warning from LVO, I'm practicing with a timer on myself so I can make sure that I'm being conscious about how much time I'm taking during my play, and that I'm giving my opponent an equal amount of time.
Right. So I want to frame this whole situation. So just not to restate exactly what you said, but here you are playing Luke Cook. Luke Cook has done a lot in Legion. You had not played Luke Cook before. You likely know that you're going to be in for a tough game, at least against a great opponent. You're playing Game 7. You're playing back-to-back days. You're on limited sleep. You're on a table that's difficult for you to reach, so you want to make sure that your moves are meticulous. You are slightly ahead in time in terms of spending more time than your opponent. You get a warning for that. You have to make conscious adjustments with that. Luke makes a pull, makes an error that anyone could make, and likely is compounded by him experiencing similar factors as you. You don't catch it because you're probably not checking on the tokens. You're that Luke's flipping over. You're probably more listening to his articulation of what the tokens are and what he's doing. B, you're probably contemplating your next turn. At that point, you'd already received warnings for play. So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you're probably being very conscious at this point of your gameplay, playing through your turns at a pace that's reasonable for the judges. So I don't think that there's any fault to be had on either side. I watched it. I seen Luke pull the token. I didn't catch or hear. I obviously saw the aftermath as it got sorted out. But I think that everything was handled nicely. Neither one of you became upset. You were both very cordial in that, in my estimation, there. To have a couple points, the 1 point against you, I'm probably going to be very tough to be convinced that is an acceptable thing to assess to you, because it's very difficult for you to potentially monitor everything that your opponent does throughout the turn, or any turn, or throughout 7 games. I know a number of times I've either missed a trigger, missed a suppression, missed a this, missed a that, and I either asked to go back and it's either granted or not granted, but seldom have I ever involved or had to involve a judge to address that. I would hope that I wouldn't be assessed penalties for that, because it almost puts me at some reservation in terms of actually asking for a judge to fix situations, and that's just kind of my interpretation of that. Do you know for the folks out there, is it, and maybe LJ can speak to this, is it 5 points before a match loss is assessed, or a DQ is given, or whatever the terminology is? Is it 3? Is there some other threshold? Does something happen at 3?
Yeah, it's 5.
It's 5. Okay, so it's 5 within a tournament or a game?
In a competitive event, it's 5 before you get a match loss, and that's a match loss. And then it's 7 in a casual, so there's a difference between the two. But then you get the match loss, and then there is a DQ tree that I'm not as familiar with, because luckily I haven't had to be. But that's the basic threshold.
And sorry, LJ, I'm not sure if you clarified. Is that through an event, or is that within a single match?
It's tracked for an event. So
okay.
As a TO, just to give an insight into the process, I have a spreadsheet that has everybody's names, everybody's emails. If you signed up on TTO, if your list was submitted, I have like a big doc that I run that's segregated per day. And then there's also a space for notes, and we use that to track accumulated points. So you could accumulate a point because you submitted your list on time, but then you realized you made a mistake and you have to fix it. And even though you made an honest mistake, we have to take the intent out of it, because you can't go by intent in situations like that. So it creates kind of a running total for the entire event for you. Now, I wouldn't count points that you accumulated in the Friday heat against you in the team event, let's say.
Okay.
But it is a running total.
Are players made aware, let's just say they made a list submission error and they're assessed a 1 point, would all those players, I'm not sure there's all those, but would a player be made aware that they have been assessed a point?
Yes, so to take an example without using any names, I had a player say, hey, I realized in the list I submitted to you, I'm to put coordinated bombardment in, and I put covert observation, not covert observation, sabotage, the ones that the rebels have, sabotage one. And I look at that as somebody who plays Legion, and I go, okay, that makes sense. Most people who play Leia are probably going to run her 1 pip. So then I email back and I say, okay, if that is the case, then I will allow you to change your list because it is still before the event. That's no problem. But be warned, if you do that, you are going to incur a 1 point penalty. So that they are very much made aware of that possible penalty if they do so. And most people, I've been fine with it. I actually haven't had any of the pre-event penalties like that. Never had a problem with anybody getting those, because most of the time it's not going to come up again for the rest of the weekend.
Okay. Chris is saying in chat that if you get 3 points, and I can't verify this, but perhaps you can. If you get 3 points, there is a record reported to OP.
I think that's correct. I know for sure if you have to do a match loss, then you must report that up. And they kind of keep like a big running total. If you went to three majors in a row and you were DQ'd a game at each of those, I'm sure they would maybe take some action post event and do something about that in the future.
Right. I really like what you said, Kyle. Like you kind of turned a negative into a positive. I wanted to frame this entire thing in a positive light because we all are subject to floor rules. You were not aware of the timing piece, and I guess in a way you weren't necessarily aware that there would be a point assessed to you about that. However, you've drawn some attention to that so players can be cognizant. You also went away and started immediately trying to adjust your game in terms of playing with the chess clock, and I think that's what we should be doing. If you need to make an adjustment in your play style for whatever reason, too aggressive, playing too slowly, maybe mismanaging of your tokens or your units in some way, shape, or form, kind of looking to clean that up as opposed to just using that as an excuse. I think is a positive takeaway for everybody. So that's good that you are. I have been playing with timers quite a bit. I tend to play a little bit quicker. I played most of my games to 6 turns, although one I only played to 4. And I'm not saying that that's on my opponent or on me specifically. That game, for whatever reason, there was just a lot of manipulation. I actually find that the suppression prevalence in the game right now via certain lists and certain cards is actually significantly slowing the game down, as well as displacement, and that's on me for running tauntauns. However, I do find that the suppression distribution, you would think that it would limit it because actions would be limited. However, I do find that because you are not getting the 2 action choice a lot of times, I'm having to think long and hard about one efficient action and what action I'm taking. So I'm not sure. I mean, anyone can chime in about their experience with that, but that's certainly been mine.
No, I think that does make sense. Displacement is a big one. We chat. We talked as judges about stuff like that comes up to make sure everybody's clear on certain rules that might slow somebody else's game down. So that's a great one to bring up. I'm super happy to hear Kyle take that and turn it into a positive, like you said, because I think that's why Brendan did it. He knew what kind of stage we were operating on at LVO and wanted people to understand, hey, this is a thing that could happen to you in the floor docs. And if you read the floor rules, you don't have to penalize people. The TO or judge, marshal, whatever you may be who's handing out the penalty has the discretion to not give the associated penalty with the offense. But I think because we're at this stage where people still don't even know what the floor rules are, but those have been governing events since Gen Con, from Primes all the way up to the Continental. This was a good opportunity for people to be aware of their implications, and it's a good note for TOs and judges too, because a lot of times we don't want to give penalties because we know these people. Kyle, do you know Brendan? Have you met him before?
I know him. I know him well.
Exactly. So, it was probably kind of hard for Brendan to give that penalty in retrospect because he's giving it on a fellow community member that he's going to see a lot more often than I probably will. But at the same time, we had a stage where we could show people those and hopefully get them used to at least, hey, why don't you check these out before Worlds? Why don't you check these out before the next Prime? Because they're probably not going away anytime soon. And it's good to hear that in total they were used in a positive light in this case. Not every interaction with them is going to be positive, but there's a reason they're there. There's a rule that's been broken. There's a standard that needs to be achieved. And overall, I think they do the job that they're supposed to do. But that line in there that says that, the judge, marshal, TO have the discretion on when to enforce a rule is very important for the person that is going to give out those penalties or not give them out.
Yeah, no, I was definitely frustrated in the moment, and might have gotten a little snippy with Brendan because we're on that personal level. No excuse, but I try to take that as a heavy learning experience of, okay, let's evaluate how I can make this better so it doesn't happen again.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I want to take that away from anything, any game loss, any errors or penalties that I got. I just try to learn from them.
Yep. Zach Berry is pointing out in chat that I'm not sure who the reference is, but somebody should be getting salty with Cirillo right now. So I'm not sure if that's you, Kyle, or LJ, or I
Oh
mean,
no, that's Nathan. Nathan joined us, and I
oh,
believe
reference.
I know it's a long time coming, but I do believe Critical X is supposed to film another episode.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
oh,
I
Uh-oh.
know. Yeah, right. The
don't hold
moon,
your
the sun,
breath.
the planets have
Yeah.
aligned. It might be time for another one.
Fair. Yeah, takes a while to get stuff up on dial-up, I guess. So,
Yeah.
gotcha. Awesome. Okay, well, Joe, any things on floor rules, questions, specific comments,
Oh,
interactions?
I've got a million questions on the floor rules, I guess. Like, so I mean,
Rip.
okay. No, 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 no. Okay. I've spoken about this at length. I'm not gonna like get on a soapbox here. Obviously, I feel like personally I have a few disagreements with some of the things in the floor rules. Um, However, that being said, it's like everyone's job to enforce them, and you guys are working with the document you have, right? So I'm not like trying to come down on any TOs or anything. I just think some of the stuff in that document is a potentially a little harsh and also potentially a little confusing for certain situations.
Yeah,
And
that's more than understandable. We're all getting used to using it. The good thing is we've been able to give a lot of feedback back to FFG that I think is going to affect maybe a Legion OP doc update here in the future, and then
mhm,
eventual change of the four rules document. So it's good feedback to keep going, and it sucks to talk about them or to have them, I think is the way I wanted to say that. It
mhm,
sucks to have them, and the unfortunate thing is we have them because somebody did X.
right.
And 99% of the people that come to our events are not going to do X. But because
Mhm,
one idiot ruined it for everybody else, now we've got to have a rule in the floor doc for it. And
yeah.
I know a lot of other stories that I've heard from other games and some other FFG games that make me realize, yep, that's probably why that rule made it into the floor talk, unfortunately.
Yeah. So LJ, while we got you here, then can you clarify some stuff since you're like probably more in tune with the floor rules than I am, at least. I mean, I haven't really had to like use them at all in terms of like in running an event. But there was just some stuff I thought was a little, I guess, like confusing or just maybe needed some clarification. So like I know that there's a rule in the floor rules about like offensive models
Hmm.
not being allowed. And I believe it was Gen Con where someone was told that, they had like an Obi-Wan that they converted where he was like giving the middle finger instead of having his hand flat. And
Hmm.
Brendan didn't allow that, right? Because the model was offensive, I guess.
If I remember that, I don't know if he actually brought that to Gen Con, though maybe he did because I didn't go this year.
Mhm.
Um, but he posted it on Facebook,
Yeah,
this gentleman,
definitely.
and,
Yep.
and Brendan commented and said, "Hey, just so you know, underneath the floor rules, that model might not be allowed." And that one, that's where they put in that line that said it's up to the judge to enforce or not enforce.
Right.
That I think that's exactly why they have that, because
Right.
FFG's trying to break, I think, several stereotypes about gaming culture with
Mhm.
including something like that in the floor rules, but there's
Mhm.
obviously a time and a place where you enforce it. So
Yeah.
I think if you would have brought it to Gen Con, I think it's highly possible that Brendan might have just let it slide anyway, but
There.
he wanted to comment on the post and be like, hey, if you bring this to an event, you might not be able to use it. And here's why, because people weren't used to the floor rules yet and still aren't used to it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So like just to go back to that for a second, I know for sure that there was one model that was banned at Gen Con, and
Okay.
I understand why. It was a topless Leia conversion.
Oh yeah, I'm
So
familiar with that model.
right. So okay, I get that.
Yeah.
However, so again, I got to say this at LVO, the Naboo tables, beautiful. I pulled you over. I pulled Brendan over to ask a bunch of questions because I have a Naboo table myself, and I was like, these are so good. I want to steal some of these ideas. I took a million pictures of them. Part of our photo dump that we did from LVO had a bunch of pictures. People were loving those tables. Lots of good comments, lots of good feedback. A couple people private messaged us saying that they were a little bit bothered by the Jar Jar statues that were nude,
Yep,
right? So
the classical Jar Jars.
right, so that's where I'm like, okay, so you've got a nude male body part on the table at LVO.
Gungan body
Yep,
part.
right. But like the Leia was not allowed and the Obi-Wan was not allowed. So just like how do you actually define what is and isn't offensive, or it's one of those things. It's just kind of strange.
And there's no hard fast rule. It doesn't say it is so discretionary, and that's got to be a discussion between the person who's running the event, the TO, and your marshal head judge who is responsible for the ruling of that event. So it's almost like your TO has to decide what kind of image does my event want to project, and then the marshal head judge is the one that is enforcing that image. And I think that's kind of it's a dichotomy that we're going to continue to discover and work with as we continue with these floor rules, but it's probably going to be a little different from event to event, to be perfectly honest. The way that Brendan and I feed off each other is going to be different than the way that John Brader, for example, might feed off people that work with him, because he's the one that helped with Nova and I think he's running it again this upcoming year. And it's because it's not based off a hard fast rule in the floor documents, where I saw the comment you just put up on the screen there, Sean, a second ago. It's either going to come from previous example where we've asked FFG OP and been like, hey, do you think this thing is okay? Because ultimately we're running an event for them, or it's going to come from our own morals and backgrounds. And so, that's something that I deal with. I teach. I know Sean teaches. That's something that we've both probably dealt with. I'm a history teacher, and when I show stuff from back in the day, nude is an art form, and that's something that comes up every once in a while. But I've also got seventh graders that are going to go ooh and lose their minds when you have to do something like that. So, I think it's taking care of what you can when you can. It's a little bit of mix of being flexible, and then it's that last topic I touched on about what kind of image do you want to project for this event, and I think that's probably the most important part from the TO standpoint.
Fair enough. Is this one of those things where the best ask, I guess, is to visit with your TO ahead of time? Or is it one of those things that could potentially come up, halfway through an event? What if I don't show you my Obi-Wan? I play 2 games with it, and then in my 3rd game, someone walks around and is like, hey, I don't like that. And I don't have one to swap out or something. Like, at what point do you make that call? Or, and maybe what someone thinks is offensive, maybe several other people don't think is offensive, right? So it's kind of strange. I guess my recommendation would be, if it's contentious, obviously just ask the TO ahead of time.
Yeah, we always encourage people for, conversions, proxies, to email us ahead of time, message us, Facebook, Discord, whatever, and let us get eyes on the model, because we can always pre-bless or give guidance on that sculpt, whatever it may be, beforehand. That's a huge one. When stuff like that comes up on the day, I know Brendan did have to make a ruling related to an ATST that didn't have the arcs on the base and what to do about that. We assess it when we learn about it. If we find that you've played 2 games with an illegal model, you could be assessed a penalty post game for a model. Probably not something as bad as like a game retroactive game loss. That would probably be way too harsh. But if there was some sort of thing that might have caused a problem with the game state, I wouldn't be surprised to award a point or two depending on the nature of the offense. And in the floor rules, that is something that you can do after games have been played. But again, it all goes back to that TO's discretion. You have to be able to work out, okay, what is fair and right, and it puts a lot of pressure on the head judge and the TO, but that's
Definitely.
why they're the head judge and the TO to make those
Right.
kind of decisions. And ultimately, as the TO, you got to own the decisions that are made at your event, and you got
Fair
to be
enough.
comfortable with it. So make sure the dialogue is there, be honest with your players, and do what is fair at the end of the day. And I think that avoids a lot of problems.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have a few more questions.
Sure.
So, what is the situation with? I know there's like an 11-day rule for model legality, right?
Mhm.
And it applies particularly to North America, as far as I'm aware, unless I'm wrong. Okay.
Nope, it is an NA rule, not USA. It's a North America rule specifically.
Okay. So my question around that is that up to TO discretion as well?
Okay, let me answer this in two ways. A TO can say whatever they want because they're a person.
Yeah.
And they will say whatever they want. In the rules, it is not.
Right.
That is, you are running, if you're running a prime and above, you are running a competitive event. And in the rules, a competitive event must be run in very specific ways. And that's why FFG makes sure to send out, their 2-3 page rule pack with each event kit that says, this is how you should run the event. They've gotten a lot more detailed from the RPQs, and there's a lot more guidance in there. So if you're running a prime, if you're running a grand champ, if you're running a continental, if you're running worlds, you do have to follow those rules, because even though, yes, you're the TO and you can say, oh, these rules just came out and they've been available in Germany for 3 months, so who cares? If FFG, confirms that you did that, you could lose the capacity, the store could lose the capacity to run an event at a future date. And of course, we never want something like that to happen.
Yeah, see, that's kind of what I was getting at. So is that essentially the potential penalty for that? Is essentially like, oh, next year when you apply to get another prime, you might not get it? Or is it one of those things where you would actually potentially retroactively like remove someone's world's invite or something like that? What really is the protocol there? I guess, and I know that you're speaking on behalf of FFG. I don't know if you actually can make that call or not, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, people like to throw that shoe at me all the time. I think there was an FFG. See, I did it myself. There was an LVO post I made like 5 days before the event, and somebody asked me why their product was delayed, and I was like, I don't know. I cannot help you with that, sir.
Right.
Please take this link instead.
Right.
So Kyle, because you couldn't get those boxes right next door, just ask LJ whether your store didn't get enough for you. So
Yep. That's what I'm here for. I'm a punching bag.
I heard that I heard that there was a prime where this weekend that happened where the winner used offensive push.
Right, and
I
I
believe
would not be surprised if they took that person's world invite away and did not allow them to pass it down to the next person. The only problem with saying this and making this call is that there's literally no precedent, because RPQs were such a different world and they had so much more hands-on with the Grand Championship equivalents. And so I would not be surprised if they took that and passed it down to the next person. They've been great about pass downs at Prime, so if it happened to a Prime, I could very well see them essentially doing a retroactive game loss and saying that, yeah, the next person in line could get it instead, and therefore not punishing the store because of a mistake they made. It just depends on what FFG feels like on the day, because to be honest, there really is not a precedent that we can draw on, and
Yeah.
we'll have to see if they make that call.
I think that's kind of one of the problems. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean, but I mean,
That's okay.
one, I think it's sometimes a little unclear, especially if you're maybe a TO who's just a very casual observer of the Legion community, what is and isn't legal. Because I don't think FFG makes it abundantly clear publicly, like, hey, these models are banned until X date. It's kind of like, oh, you got to go on the website, you got to see the release date, you got to know about the 11-day rule, and then you got to make that call. And I think it gets a little more muddied and convoluted when you're dealing with upgrade cards as opposed to models, because you're like, oh, what pack did that come in? Is this upgrade even legal? So that gets a little confusing. I know that there's like there's a Prime Championship happening in Illinois at a store that didn't have an RPQ, and they have like a very small community, but they got a Prime this time around, which good on them, and I'm happy to go. A bunch of us are going, but I don't know their TO. I don't know how up to date their TO is with like the specifics of the Legion rules. And I think that maybe a recommendation I would make publicly to like FFG is to try to make that a little bit more clear going forward, to clear up some confusion. Like, so if models aren't allowed to be played until, February 1st or whatever, show that on the website somewhere, like very clear, so that it's not super confusing. Because maybe people aren't even trying to break the rules and they just like accidentally are. It's one of those things.
Right, and that's always one of the downsides of having that kind of system is not everybody's as tapped into the community as you or myself might not be. They do have a like product legality page that you can reference, but I do agree in that I think it should be maybe a little bit more visible. Actually, this is good timing because I see Jeff just had a comment about making the things public, and I did have a very long conversation with Matt Holland about that, specifically at LVO, because Jeff and I had a pretty large discussion the week before, and we had a good long debrief after your guys' Prime. And so what they're trying to do, they just sent out issue 1, volume 1 of their newsletter, which hopefully lets people know, hey, these are the kits that are available, and this is how long you can get them for, and this is when you can apply for the next wave of primes. But I believe that next step in the development is a more formal OP website, and that'll be more integral to their reporting process. And more importantly, what I suggested to him, which has been brought up several times now, put the documents up there so players can view them, because not all stores are very good about sharing them. And I know myself and Brendan have tried to educate and share as much as we can, but yes, please scan and put those documents up somewhere publicly so the players know what the rules are. And I think that will go a long way to avoiding some of those potential feel bad experiences that nobody wants to have.
Yeah, I was almost wondering even if there is some room for interpretation. It's like, hey, this tournament's on day 10, not day 11. You guys could just use your R2s or whatever. It's like, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see if that changes. I always thought Sean and I have been talking a bunch about this. We're like, how did they come up with 11 days? It's not 7. It's not 14. It's just some random number. It's kind of funny.
It wouldn't surprise me if they picked it because they know they release their stuff on Thursdays, Fridays, and therefore 11 days is always like a Tuesday, Wednesday, and so you're never going to have like a competitive level event that is on a Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't think it's happened yet.
So it's usually
maybe
Saturdays.
That factors in, because we're a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday oriented group. So like maybe that's why they did it. I'm actually a bit more in favor of changing the rules just a little bit to where Grand Championships and above are subjected to a rule like the 11-day rule. But I actually really liked that the RPQs didn't have that time because it helped that community feel of, hey, this new product has come out, come and test it at.
That was one of the big things. It's like we all got our new specialist. Like 8 days, they're like 8 days legal or something for this Prime on Saturday, and we're like, we wanted to put all these new toys on the table. We got them. We're scrambling to glue them. We're hobbying them. We're excited, and then it's like, oh man, the next event after this might be 6 weeks away or something. What,
right.
You know,
if we get B2s and tanks at the end of the month, I'm pretty sure one of my local primes is the next day, so I wouldn't get to use them at that. And so I am hoping as time goes on, we get a little bit of flexibility within those rules as we learn some lessons. If it helps the players out there feel any better, Brendan, myself, we are constantly passing that feedback on to OP. And, OP in particular has been in a really weird spot. Just because they went through a major change. Yeah. Then they had a bit of a shakeup within their ranks because some people got promoted. And then FFG had the layoff thing and they lost another team member. So the reason why the OP situation has seemed so inconsistent is because OP has been so inconsistent to very little fault of their own. It's just the way that business has been going within the company. And I'm hoping that as we enter, quote unquote, year 3 of Legion here soon, that we'll have a system that by the time we get to the next Gen Con will have been in place for a year and people will be more familiar with it and that it won't change. I know people do not want it to change, and hopefully it does not change as time goes on. And I think that alleviates a lot of stress on people.
Certainly, I agree. Yep. All right, do you guys have anything else? I mean, that's kind of my questions around the floor docs.
Got it. Okay, I got a couple things.
We need the Sean corner. Come on, Sean.
Yeah.
Just
keep it up. No. We need to throw this down to Kyle. So Kyle, I'm gonna throw you this. You're gonna end off this, and we're gonna lead into that last segment on Worlds because I do want to hear about your LVO prep and how that's going to potentially influence your Worlds prep as well. And so consistently inconsistent is a term I like to use all the time when things are consistently chaotic. So, and apparently Zach has confirmed that LJ is an agent of chaos. So
I am. I root for the football when I watch football. Not gonna lie.
Fair. I've seemingly entertained myself with hashtags in my corner all night, and the last one read hashtag don't cut me off, Joe. So Kyle, and you can say whatever you want on here because as LJ's pointed out, TOs can say whatever they want, and guests of the Legion Academy can also say whatever they want. So if you were to be able to control the 11-day rule, and let me sort of skew your response. If I had my magic wand, I say that I would love to have OP give us a date. It doesn't have to be street date. It's just a date. This Model X is legal on this date because 11 days, model comes out. I may get it on the day it comes out. I may get that model in 3 months after it comes out. So having a model 11 days after doesn't guarantee necessarily when I go to an event that I would have had that model for 11 days. I might have got it the day before. I might not get the model for 2 weeks. So having just an arbitrary 11-day span, I don't know what that gives people. Because you can't say that it gives people time to learn or read the rules of the model or put it, because I may get the model 30 days after it comes out, as I put. It doesn't really matter. I don't know what the 11 days gives people. So if my magic wand says, pick a date. X model's legal, X date. You can play it. If you have an RPQ the next day, or a Prime, or whatever, or a Continental, you can play it. As long as it comes out after that date, and make that date worldwide. It doesn't matter when the release schedule. If your local store doesn't get them, I guess that's too bad for you. I mean, that happens anyway. It doesn't really matter. You said so yourself tonight that you were unable to get most of what was released. I have many of what was released. People had it days before I had it. But all that timeline's artificial in terms of what that actually does to impact an event. So I throw it over to you. Tell me how you would make this this release schedule better for primes, or do you love the 11 days?
I only really care about that they do get back to consistency. Because we were used to your new product comes out at the end of the month, the last Thursday of the month, and then they moved it to the last Friday. Not a big deal, but it is still consistent. And then all the trade stuff with China happened, and it was on the boat for forever. And it seems like we are just up in the air of when stuff is going to come out. And so as it came to LVO, like initially I was thinking about like, okay, what if I run into an op Vader or an op Luke, and then or upgrades, and then they got delayed, and then I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And now I'm running into the same thing with Worlds. Is all right, am I gonna probably run into the new tanks, but will there be B2s? Will there be phase 2s? Will there be newer stuff than that? Like, or are those
even
gonna be
scarier? Are we going to have to learn new objectives for 11 days?
Vital assets.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I hope so.
I
God,
hope
love
not. I hope not.
You see, with mine, I think I'm right there with you, LJ, because with my plan, you pick a date, and now it's like, okay, once we get in that 11-day window from Worlds, we know we were not going to see whatever. However, what if it was 4 days before Worlds and something drops? I like the prospect of everyone can get it. Everyone has the opportunity. Will everyone? I don't know. I get for events that potentially not everyone having the same set of objectives is a concern. However, if I didn't buy the priority supplies, I just don't have those objectives. There's nothing that says I have to have those objectives. We have that right. We have that right now.
You get into a weird whole side discussion about balance and this and that, and that's a tough one. I think I don't know if there's even a good answer for that, especially when you're dealing with like supply chain delays and stuff.
I feel like even 11 days is not a long time. So
no, I think for the bigger events, I might almost want to see. I think somebody else suggested this too, and I'm going to steal it. I'd be okay with a 30-day. Yeah. And I know people might not like that, but when you talk about like Worlds, I am okay with a 30-day limit for something like that because it allows players to solidify their list and get real practice
and practice. Because here's the thing, this is actually a point of contention. It's very unrelated to wargaming, but in the fighting game, the video game fighting game community, oftentimes there are staggered releases of new characters over the course of the year, and there's also staggered major tournaments, a la like an LVO, but for that world, throughout the course of the year. And they'll just say, hey, straight up, we're telling you 2 months ahead of time, we're playing this patch. Even if new characters come out, they're not legal. Okay. Because it gives you that time to practice a specific meta, and then you're not surprised by anything 3 days before a major event or something.
Okay, so just to be very clear about my point, I am 100% saying pick a date.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's 30 days out or 60 days out or 15 days out. No guessing, but it's legal on that date, whatever you set. And OP can set that. So it could be 30 days out. I'm fine with that. But no guessing. I don't like this waiting up to the 11-day window. We're all holding our breath. And then we're like, okay,
Vader?
now,
Vader
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, now he's not. Now I'm going to start playtesting everything that's not that, instead of wasting time practicing against things that I potentially could or couldn't see. So I'm not saying it needs to be 3 days before an event. I'm not suggesting that, but pick a date and just make that the date. And if your store doesn't get them, if I only get them 20 days out, even though that date's been picked, I guess that's on my end. But like, I just dislike it's whenever it comes out and then there's an 11-day window. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do like the idea of having the information well in advance, right? That's a good point. 30 days, I think, is a great point because you'll know a month ahead of time, like, this is what I have to work with. For this last month, I know, like, this is what I can expect to see. This is the meta that we're playing in, right? We're not guessing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
Okay.
in these really competitive events too, stuff that comes out really soon to the event, uh, it'll delay games because people won't know all the fine details of what that unit can do or what it's capable of. Especially if it's like an operative or commander, like, oh, I'm playing this command card. Okay, I need to read that because I have no idea what it does.
Yeah, command
I
cards can get really spicy in that department, and if vital assets came out in time to make it to Worlds, it would probably affect our round times. I have no doubt about that.
I straight up would say, like, I would love an announcement tomorrow that Vital Assets, regardless of release date, is banned at Worlds.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
hoping
just
with Brendan and myself having that good avenue with Fantasy Flight games, maybe we can try to solidify that. And that's my role, because you guys know I am playing at Worlds. My role is, for Worlds, I do the kind of like strategic level stuff, and I try to help plan, write packets, do that kind of coordination, so I can hand it over to Brendan and he can run a smooth event. So I mean, that's a great one that we could pass on up the chain and see if we could maybe get like a Matt Holland comment on or something like that. I think that'd be perfectly acceptable and more than reasonable, and I think that put a lot of fears at ease, to be perfectly honest.
yeah, I think a lot of people would appreciate that for sure. Kyle,
Yes.
got a question for you. So you brought a fairly unique list to
Yes.
LVO. Do you have a name for it? Because I think you just created a new meta. The hunter spam.
Yeah, no, I hadn't created a name for it, but I'll leave that open to the community. I know there's some creative minds in there.
I really like that list. I thought it was really clever. Smart.
All right.
Smart. Yeah.
Chat,
I
you
just
gotta-
went with-
chat job.
Like the
What's
current meta at the time of LVO,
Mm.
you have the Clone Wars factions where their biggest units are these trooper multi-wound models, Dooku, Grievous,
Yep.
Obi-Wan, and then Tauntauns, and then other multi-wound heroes and operatives. It just seemed like an all-around good list. And
Oh yeah.
shore troopers by themselves are so efficient, and like right now they're irreplaceable.
Definitely. Awesome.
Awesome. New co-host,
So-
by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
say
I see
hi.
we have a guest.
Yeah.
This is,
Just
this
all
is
start
Bella.
bringing dogs on.
Bella
Actually,
hanging out. So
Yeah, that dog kind of looks familiar. My wife has a dog that looks almost exactly the same. For her
yeah,
family.
we have a husky and then we have a fat chihuahua. So I just tell people we have two huskies. It's a lot easier that way. Yeah.
I actually have a husky too, so if I could convince him to come in here.
Nice.
Okay. So we've chatted floor document.
Anyway.
We've chatted. We've picked LJ's brain about all the things that he can go solve now. So we've left him with that. I am very interested in the next topic, and we're going to start with you, Kyle, too, just because I am interested in how people prep for events. So just coming off the tail end of we have no idea what's legal, I put up a hashtag make vital assets legal just to create some chaos. So I'm fully fine if we have some chaos in there. But what's your preparation going in, like coming out of LVO in terms of what you saw? Predictions for what you need to prepare for. Are you preparing for the same things? Obviously, we will likely have at least one release. We just got it. That will probably influence that. And then LJ, while he's kind of chatting, thinking about your end, what can we as players kind of look forward to that maybe is different than LVO or similar or more of the same as we kind of prepare for Worlds, which is surprisingly exceptionally close. So just as I'm chatting here, I have Jace trying to bug me about booking flights to LVO as if he doesn't know I'm on a live chat right now. Jeez, this guy. Fair enough. All right, Kyle, take it away.
So before LVO, I had played my list that I brought 21 times.
Nice.
And
It's 20 more than I
So-
played mine.
So I had a really good understanding of what my list was capable of and how I performed against different lists that I encountered. I don't play on TTS very much. My computer is actually broken right now, so I need to start a GoFundMe so I can get back on TTS. But I just went out in my local community and played people that were equal skill as me, people that were, I'd say, like middle tier, lower skill. I just tried to play everybody and every faction to see what kind of possible list I would run into at LVO. Because it wasn't going to be like Worlds where everyone has won an invite. So they're, I'd say, middle to high tier level players. So with that in mind, getting ready for Worlds, my buddy Nathan Willens also has an invite to Worlds. So we are scheduling games to play against each other. We're both high caliber players. And that's the best training I can have. He's running experimental lists, and I'm running experimental lists. Like last week, I experimented with the new Vader, the Op Vader, and I've tried using him using Commander Vader with operative cards or Operative Vader with Commander cards. And just kind of, right now I'm in experimental phase of really trying to figure out what kind of things are possible with the new releases. And I'll be there for a couple more weeks, but then once I kind of finalize that list of, okay, I think I have a decent shot with this. It's kind of an all-comers list. I'm just going to practice the hell out of it. Like, I'll try to get 20 more games in before Worlds,
What kind of prep do you anticipate doing, or have you even tried against, let's say that we will get the tanks? Because I mean, Joe and I have been talking a lot about, I think they're going to be very impactful in the game. No pun intended.
Literally
with that,
impactful.
yeah. But also going to be something that even if you're not taking one, you're going to need to have an answer for either one of them. And the fact that both factions are going to potentially see a heavy, the chances of running into one are fairly decent.
Right. It really helps that Fantasy Flight has given us streams of them using those models, and we've seen the upgrade cards, we've seen the weapon and unit stats, and so I could play with a proxy, even though I don't have the correct base. I can estimate, and try to see how my LVO list will perform against it, or I use it to see kind of if this is something I want to use, or if it's something that is just going to totally shake things up. And so with those being later releases and you're not going to get a bunch of time with the physical model to test it before Worlds, using proxies is definitely the way to go with that. And that's another area that Tabletop Simulator can really help, is because they have those on there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that's actually my biggest takeaway from that. It's really hard to proxy the tank without the base because it's on a new base.
Yeah.
Right. But at least TTS has it in there. So if you want to start now, you can at least like estimate, its line of sight profile and stuff.
Yeah,
so
that was one of the first things we did after I got those pictures put in the Discord the other day. Was a friend jumped on and was like, "All right, I threw together a list with the new veteran clone pilot with the beam gun. Let's go give it a whirl and see how it does." And it's nice to have that a little more accessible. I don't have a scene that I can tap into all the time, and so for me, I mean, part of the only reason why I think I did well last year was because I pushed myself to practice with other people and get kind of that view of other metas, and it was nice because it took me out of my comfortable box, and I could test new stuff. I could mess with interesting product, and I could also get that that practice before it was released against people that played a different style of Legion than me.
LJ, did you?
And people
Oh, sorry.
that don't
Go ahead,
play
Kyle.
on TTS, they gave us the dimensions of the model and of the base in particular. You could cut out a piece of paper and have that
Put a soup can on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Where there's a
Creative players will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yep. If there's a will, there's a way. Sean,
Yeah.
were you asking about the thing you put up in chat there?
I was, but before I do that, I was going to ask Joe if it was going to be chicken noodle or tomato at this point. So, but yeah, yeah, fair enough. Pea soup. Yeah, if you want to handle that question there, LJ, Avery Wood is just asking, hey, what's Worlds?
What is Worlds? I mean, Worlds is kind of a culmination of the competitive season. You have events that started all the way back in April, right after the previous, what we called High Command finished, and players who won a spot at top events could go on to this competition at Adepticon, which is coming up in just under 2 months here. And so what it is there's 80 spots a day in 2 qualifier heats, so there's about 160 spots total. I think if everybody used a ticket, earned it, and didn't burn it, there was 200 spots that were given away this last competitive year, or will be given away by the time Worlds happens. And you'll have 2 4-round days. Then there'll be 32... 32 players about that will play on Saturday. You'll play 4 more rounds, and the top 4 will play again on Sunday. So you'll have kind of like a game A, game B, and then game C. It's going to get real busy real quick, because not only do you have that going on, but there's also a skirmish event going on at Worlds as well, and then a big team battle on Sunday, and then there's a narrative thing that is being sponsored by somebody else as well.
Fair. We're all entertaining ourselves with facial hair comments while LJ's actually giving legitimate Legion information here. So
yeah, if you like it, enjoy it, because I have drill this weekend, so it's getting cut off tomorrow. So the beard grows back real quick, and then I get rid of it real quick. It comes and it goes.
Fair. Well, it wouldn't be the first time I feel inadequate on my own podcast, so that's fine. Thanks for pointing that out, Christopher. You're welcome.
Somebody was asking about the tank replacing General Grievous too, I notice.
Oh yeah, I think so, man. That's
it's a play style thing. I don't know if droids will truly be able to gunline quite yet, but I really have started to appreciate they master range 3 if you play them correctly. And then you have your 2 or single commander really act as that linebacker, and occasionally the aggressor if you play that double commander list, where you can just send Grievous in like a heat-seeking missile and annihilate something. I think it'll really depend on your play style. I still love Double the Fall, and I'll be perfectly honest, I will be playing it at Worlds. I'm just upfront like that. I've been practicing it since I could in October, and like Kyle mentioned, I don't feel good with a list until I've put at least 20 games in with the exact same configuration of a list, and Double the Fall is the one that I've been practicing consistently. So slap me if I'm not playing it at Worlds, because I'm a dirty higher.
I think it hangs. I think it hangs, man. You know what? Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because I love that list. Any changes with the new specialist box or the new heavies, or are you just going to stick to the double rocket 4E5C?
No, I have been messing around with the heavy weapons and what feels good with me as a player for a long time, because it has to gel well with me. It has to be natural with me, because at the end of 8 games, you're not thinking straight. Your brain doesn't work correctly. As Kyle was talking about with him and Luke, you felt it. You're gone by the time you get to that last game. You're just trying to make the best decision possible. And so what I have been very comfortable with is actually 4 E5Cs and 2 of the snipers. And then the
Nice.
E5Cs all have an extra body. So those are kind of like my bruiser squads, I call them, because they've got the full 8 dudes and they're all kind of in a big stack together.
Mhm.
And then the snipers are kind of like my strikers. They're not fighting at range 4. They're mixed in with the mob. And then they go after hard targets and take shots of opportunity. And that's
Yeah.
worked really well with me. And I find that perfect activation control is consistently worth 2 activations. So I feel like I'm playing a 10 activation list when I play an 8 activation list. And I think that's big.
I agree. Yeah, I love
Fair.
that list.
Why did you shy away from the poison guns?
I really have not been able to play them well. And I think it's funny that I say that out loud because I have been trying 5B1 and a single B2 with the ACM and really loving that. But I played a game where I fought droids with multiple poison guns. I was never able to get them near the squishy commanders who could actually take the poison tokens, and went, oh, that might not be good if I play another Double the Fall because I will lose that offensive capability. So I'm going to keep testing them. I love them in theory. And I have a 6 rad cannon list I kind of
Me
love.
too. Me too. Me too.
So, I'm not totally against it, but the 4E5C and the 2 sniper has felt really good. So I'm going to keep trying that.
Cool.
Actually,
In
6 rate.
theory, I really like the poison gun because with aggressive tactics and the clones and the Imperials having those red defense dice with surge with aggressive tactics, those auto wounds just are valuable. So
Yeah.
valuable.
Yes. Yep. The best type of defense roll you can make them roll is one that they have no say over. Yep, you just take a wound. Sorry about it. And it's so valuable. So I will continue to test them, and maybe I'll change my stance on it as we get a little closer. But that's just how I've been feeling recently.
I
sure.
agree. I feel the same way. Sean,
6
what were
rate.
you going to say?
I was just going to say that 6 radiation cannons actually offends me, so you can't play it against me. So, yeah, fair.
Well, I'm sorry. It's an official FFG sculpt, so according to the floor rules, I'm sorry.
Fair. I'll bring it up in my local TO.
Your lack of facial hair offends me.
Fair.
I
Just
do
before.
think-
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sorry, Sean. I think that the Saber tank will likewise replace Obi-Wan. And I'm real interested in the beam cannon, even though it's 30 points, which is a shot in the nuts. The option of potentially reaching out to range 6 with that beam cannon, anti-sniper, anybody?
Yeah.
That's going to be nice.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love everything the Saber is about. I think they aggressively priced it because of knowing that you might want to add some options on that'll bump it up to what they thought was an appropriate level. It looks great. I got to see one at Worlds, and I got to see an AAT at Worlds. And even if you don't end up making them a staple of your list, you're going to want one because they look so good in person. They are amazing, and I can't wait for people to have them, including myself.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle. I'm going to pose a question to you in a minute when I come back, but I do need to bring this up. I'll be remiss if I don't, so I want to bring out the pledge screen, and I'm also going to read the email address because we realize that it doesn't translate onto our audio cast. So I just want to bring this up, folks. We have Michael Hammond, Nathan Gall, Mike Nielsen, El Paz, Jeff Arney, and Nick Smith, who have graciously donated to the Legion Academy thus far. We're 270 credits on our way to 700 for our third camera that we're going to be using. So if you're liking anything the studio's doing and you want to make any contributions, it is theterrainstudio2019 at gmail.com. Anything helps, and obviously just watching the podcast and tuning in every week, our guests coming on, all of this stuff supports. But if you want to go that extra mile or make a contribution, that's how you can do it. So thanks again to all of those folks.
Yeah, we also want to say thank you to all of our patrons. And once again, just really appreciate you guys supporting us, helping us out. staying patient with all the weird things happening with the mailing of the envelopes, people getting weird tracking numbers that say they're originating from Phoenix, Arizona, even though I sent them in Chicago. All this
I'm
weird
making
stuff.
it now, actually. That's what's happening.
They're on the boat.
Yeah. So thank you, and more of them will be going out either late this week or early next. So you guys should tune for another batch of them coming your way. So thank you guys.
Okay, so my question, Kyle, talked about beam cannon. I have been theorizing. What does two saber tanks look like?
Expensive.
You can get 7 activations. It's not bad. It's double beam. You can run both the same. You can run one commander in either one, or a pilot in either one. You're not likely kitting out your clones too substantially. However, the prospects of shooting 2 beam cannons per turn is like having other activations that are potentially just putting suppression out there. It's really tough to move. I think that the counter armor presence, the ability to gang up on an opposing armored unit, actually may help you late game, because you could probably put some significant damage through. Obviously, it's objective dependent, but what are your thoughts if you're lining up across from that? Are you laughing because you think you can seal it? Are you fearful? What are you thinking?
I've always skewed away from double heavies. I just think it's too many resources tied up in units that are only really good at killing stuff. I mean, that's most of the game, but it's also very much an objectives game.
Yep.
I can't use my saber tank to claim, recover the supplies, or
You can't recover a supply if you don't have a unit either. I guess that's kind of
the
counter logic
over, and no one could claim them, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there you go.
Destroy them.
So let's hypothetically, if I was going up against a double saber tank list with my LVO list, I would try to force an objective that the saber tanks could take no part in, and then focus solely on your units that could interact with that objective. Get 1 point and turtle and hide. Like, that's a perfectly valid tactic against something like that. Because even with all my search crit and critical ones, I can't take down 2 of them likely. I maybe could take down 1, but 2 it would be too much damage to my side. So I need to box them out of playing the game.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
So just theorizing again, and this is kind of leading my down to the things to potentially prepare for Worlds. So in mine, it's a double saber with all the fixins and then 3 Z6s. Zach Berry is actually posting in chat here a 9 activation double saber tank as well, with 5 clone troopers and Captain Rex and R2. So there's bodies there. Zach, consider that stolen for playtesting. But I think the prospects of double heavy for the clones is something that we potentially could see. It's too expensive, obviously, to run it for droids, just given the commanders that we have. But I think that might, of all the double heavy lists, and I know the Imperials have one as well. I actually think that, given the beam cannon effectiveness, I'm very scared for double clone tank, to be quite honest, in terms of what that means lining up across from it. So
to clarify, it sounds gross and would be terrifying.
Yeah,
Fair.
I think especially if you start incorporating the clone pilot who can share tokens, that could get crazy. You line up a bunch of aims and standbys behind those like tank walls that they can't shoot at, and that could be interesting.
And just throwing this caveat in here as well, and R2 is applicable across multiple factions, but that inability to score a point or to obtain a point with your saber tanks very well may be a point that you could regain using R2. So you have potential with those to maybe score a point in something that isn't necessarily the straight objective of that mission, either grabbing a box or some of those. So I think that's not to be discounted in there. R2 is a real X factor, I think, going into Worlds, and I like it because how people use R2. How he gets incorporated, the threat that he opposes, just simply backcapping an objective and doing nothing to free up other more effective activations. With droids, for example, double the fall. To have to backcap with a unit of 8 droids, to me, seems ineffective. And I'm not sure what your interpretation of that, LJ or Joe, who both run them, but that to me seems like a really heavy commitment on a really... how do I say this? Kind of like you don't have soft or throwaway units in there. You don't have backcappers per se. Every one of your activations is likely has a job and needs to be effective and works with a synergy, specifically droids. So I'm not sure how you guys see that working, but I see R2 as being really effective in otherwise low activation lists.
Yeah, I pretty much agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have backcappers and double the fall. Like that's your range 4 units, but it just depends on the objective, right?
Yeah, I was specifically referring to that LJ had said that he doesn't run them like that. Or if you're not running range 4 weapons, you're running let's say you're running the 6 radiation cannon. I don't want to make that point commitment to have a backcapper and take a radiation cannon out of the mix. So, and I'm not saying droids aren't good because of that, but.
No, I talked to Lupo about this with the way that he runs double the fall, and he does very, very aggressively place his boxes and his key positions and his objectives. Yep. It's to the point where one of the worst missions for double the fall, as I've continued to play it, has actually been intercept, because that messes up your line the worst, because you do have to have a static unit. And so depending on the deployment and the setup and stuff, that's actually been one of the worst missions for me recently, because it's been hard to commit, that backcapper as we've been saying. So that is an interesting thing to keep in mind as, you play these kind of lists, is don't get stuck into playing double the fall or another list like that the same way that you played a list beforehand. Change that mentality of how you interact with the objectives, because it might mean the difference between success and defeat. The sneakiest thing that the person I was talking about earlier that played that clone tank did was he used R2-D2 to grab boxes, because he's a 35-point objective that because he's a droid trooper, so he can grab boxes. Right. And that's something that has been eye-opening to me as of late, and is something I'll keep in mind as we get new units and objectives and all that.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with you about double the fall. It's an extremely aggressive list. Like and it really does well on objective, like 2 to 3 point objectives, such as like VAPs or key positions. Like you just throw your blob at the middle and like force your opponent to deal with that, and most of the time it doesn't work out well, which I love. And I agree, intercept the transmissions is probably one of the hardest objectives for that list. I've also like struggled with intercept with that list too, so that's a good point. I love the idea though of just running 6 radiation cannons into your face. Well, I think that's going to be hilarious. Even if it's not like Ultra Worlds competitive, it's still going to win a bunch of local games, I think.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about playing Don't Rad Me, Bro at my prime at the end of the month. Double the fall with 6 rad guns. Ugh, so good.
Yeah. And if you put like a steamed leader or something. Yeah. Don't Rad Me.
Yeah, Don't Rad Me, Bro. That's the name. That's my name for it.
Nice.
I call it
either that or Fallout Boy.
Arizona Sun.
Yeah, you just call it like what? Friday.
Arizona Sunrise. The only thing that list kind of falls apart against the mirror.
Yes, it's that was my problem. Was like, okay, cool. My offensive power just went boop, downhill, and then it didn't help that I played on what was generally an open map So my range to advantage or was a disadvantage, and then I didn't even I think I got a poison token on a Grievous, and that was it. So didn't
Uh,
quite get the intended effect that I was looking for. But say la vie, do what you can
that's
do.
fair. That's fair. Cool.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we are super long, but we had tons of great conversations. So let's just go around the horn here. We'll start with Kyle, and then we'll go around. LJ will be next. Would be LVO participants or players looking to play in kind of future events. What kind of advice, as a tournament player yourself, Kyle? What kind of advice, or what's the message that you'd like to share with people as they go out and start preparing for upcoming primes or even worlds?
Go in with moderate to reasonable expectations of yourself. Like, I went into LVO hoping to go 3-1, because last year I only went 2-2, and so I've been training, practicing. I had a good list. I wanted to go 3-1, just get a little bit better. But if I didn't do that, that's okay. I'm there to have fun, meet the community, and enjoy my time. I ended up going 6-1, and that was a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic experience. Had that not happened, I'd be on the cast if you guys would have had me, but I'd probably still be an unknown name at that point.
And
So
and did you
I'd say,
achieve part B as well? Did you enjoy yourself and meet awesome people?
oh, I did, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I said. Yeah, just practice lists, make sure you know what you're capable of, and have reasonable expectations.
It's good
Awesome.
advice.
Yep.
Yeah, oh, that's very solid.
Yep. What about you, LJ?
So my biggest thing, and this does come a lot from TO, but from me as a player as well, is just make sure you know yourself, and you know what you're bringing to the table. The biggest thing that wastes time is when you're looking at your own cards because you don't know how something works. And so be familiar with what you're bringing to the table at all times, because that will help you and your opponent stay on schedule. And that's a big one I see with newer players that come in. I love the amount of new players we get at the big events that I run. But that's like a major pitfall that they can avoid. Make sure you know your own equipment, because if you're comfortable with your own setup, you're going to have a much, much better day. And I see a lot of people that are struggling with their own stuff. They're ended up throwing stuff in a box by the end of the day, and then their stuff gets damaged, and they don't know where to find something. And so, what I like to do personally is the week before, I prepare whatever my tournament box is going to be, and I've shown people pictures of this. But right now, it's a Target thing that I found. It's like it's a covered baking pan, and and it has a plastic cover over it that latches on, and that's my tournament box, because it's 2-part carrying case and display case, because everything's magnetized to it. And so what I'll do is I'll make sure that I can pack everything on there. I'll make sure I can take stuff off it, put stuff back on it relatively quickly. And then when I think I'm packed and ready to go, I'll take my box, I'll bring it to a table, and I'll set up turn 0 for a game. Because then, every once in a while, I'll go, oh crap, I forgot my line laser. I forgot my battle cards one time. And it'll help you avoid those simple mistakes at the big show. And being prepared with your own stuff, and knowing what to expect and knowing what your list brings to the table just helps alleviate a lot of those problems for when you have two people trying to help each other out and play a cooperative game of Legion, which it tends to often be.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
My recommendation to players, and take this with a grain of salt, but don't chase the meta, invent your own, and get reps in. Lots and lots of reps. I think I see some people who are just like, I read online that this list was good 3 days ago, so I'm going to bring it this weekend. It's Prime. And they don't really have any clue how it functions. And I think the best thing is to find what you're comfortable with, and played a lot. Like you guys both mentioned, 20 games. So I think that's a great advice. 20 games with the same list. If you want to, like do well at a huge tournament, know your list in and out, know how you're going to approach a variety of different opponents and lists and factions. Like, what is your answer to Double the Fall? What is your answer to Krennic Bosk? What is your answer to Heavies? What is your answer to Tauntauns? What's your answer to Luke Sabine? Do you have one? And if you don't know the answers to those, then maybe you just need to get more reps in and try that out. That's something. At least give yourself something to think about and think through those decisions. What about you, Sean?
Well, since you gave two, you actually took mine, but I was actually going to tell people to play your list. And by that, I mean, when you get to a table, you practice with your list. You didn't practice with your opponents. You've gone through the motion with your list. You know what your list can do. So just to piggyback on what Joe said, when I get to a table, I try not to get shell-shocked, if I will, by what my opponent has. If I've never seen it, then I need to be reactive. If I have experience against it, then I do what I know works. If I know the strengths of the list, then I'm going to play my own strengths against that. But don't get caught in a game where you're trying to play or anticipate your opponent's moves. You go back to your memory banks. You know what the common standard plays are. But I really like to play in my own game, and I think that's done me well. I kind of tend to be a little bit quiet at the table just because I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing. As LJ said, know what your cards do. That's one less thing you need to worry about. Be prepared, turn zero. That's one less thing to be worried about. Get reps in, as Kyle's pointed out, as Joe's pointed out. That prepares you when you step up for the table or for the game rather. So there's no. Going into every game with a plan is great. And I go in usually with about a plan A and a plan B. Regardless of the mission, regardless of the deployment, I tend to stay within certain moves for my list. That's I actually held that over primarily from X-Wing. That I would know what my list did. I'd know how to get to point A or point B wherever I was going. I'd have to respond to my opponent's moves, but I would never try to anticipate, nor would I try to get in their head. I play my own list. So simplified, play your list for sure. So that's my advice. And also don't forget your command cards, a la Al Paz. So just. Just want to throw that out. I'll pass.
Or
friend of the show.
I mean, maybe you'll just win.
Friend of the show.
You never know. We had somebody lay down all their army game one on Saturday at LVO, only to find out he had forgotten every single one of his unit cards.
Oh, I have a story. I have no shame to tell you this. I actually showed up to Sunday without my army at all.
Oh yeah,
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I literally, so I took my backpack, which had my water in it. I took my camera bag. I took my tripod bag. I took an extra bag. I was like, okay, I got all my bags. But what happened was I actually unpacked my camera bag into two. And when I left, I was like, okay, bag check. I got them all. However, I was discounting the fact that I didn't have my army bag. So like literally right before the round, I sprinted through. I didn't think you could run through the casino because security was like giving me like this really evil eye. Like here I am running through a casino. Maybe I just robbed the blackjack table. Maybe I didn't. So then I like came to the realization I'll just speed walk and just look really weird. But I made it back, and my opponent was just kind of going over the table in his pregame kind of ritual. So I didn't delay him by any means. But man, yeah, talk about being ill prepared for something. So that kind of it didn't really razzle me, but again, I was prepared, but I was a little out of breath, and gamer funk started pregame there. So that's me. Okay, so before we let everyone go, LJ had sent over something to us that he was going to share. Reference the this was in the kind of a response to the survey. Am I getting that correctly? Okay.
Yep, I totally forgot. I should have mentioned it in the first section.
All right.
There were several long-form questions, and I wanted to end, or at that moment, talk about it, but it'd be nice to end on the what was your favorite thing about LVO, and when you put the image up, there's the biggest word in the center is the one that means so much to me, and that is community. That was the word that came up the most in people's responses to what was your favorite thing about the Las Vegas Open. And the fact
Nice.
that that is there in the center, flanked by tables, not going to complain about that, but we're not going to mention that right now. Is that the community is the biggest thing right there in the center, and we are going to be showing the results of the survey here. In the next couple days. It's been a little busy here now that I've gotten back in the swing of things, but we do share the survey results with everybody so you can see what we got. But I love that. I mean, that
Yeah.
again, that's why I do this. That's why people put in there. That's why you guys do this. That's why people come to the events to see that word so big in the center as people's favorite thing about LVO. That's why I'm going to do it next year.
I'm squinting real hard here, LJ, but I'm not actually seeing the floors document mentioned anywhere in the. Did no one find that to be the best part of the weekend?
I think that's captured in the TOs that's there at the end of the S in tables. I'm just gonna say that's mixed in there somewhere.
All right, I'll give you that one, but I'm not going to zoom it. I'm not going to zoom enhance here. So fantastic. Sorry about that. Wicked. Well, I don't think we can say thank you enough to you guys. We almost went 2 hours tonight, so my apologies if we held anybody up from other things. I can't imagine what you possibly could have that's more exciting than joining us tonight. But we do thanks for everyone coming out. Kyle, once again, fantastic performance at LVO, and congrats on the finish there. LJ, excellent. Thanks for running that event, and we'll look forward to what you have in store for us at Worlds in whatever capacity. I'm not 100% sure what you are doing there, if it's the exact same as LVO or not. So you can clarify if you're doing anything different, but keep doing what you're doing for those events. We do appreciate that. I love showing up at events and having to do nothing except for play and chat with people and get hugs from random strangers. But that's that happens. But that's awesome. And Joe, as always, thanks for hanging out. Joe and I hardly ever speak through the week, and by that I mean every day. But yeah, you guys would not maybe fathom how much preparation it does actually take us to get going for these shows. So we do talk a lot about it. We want to make sure that it's good for you guys, especially if you're coming to spend time with us. So hopefully it translates into somewhat of a cohesive podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, I'm just going to leave us with the support screen. You guys can hang out for a second, and we'll let these folks have a good night. So once again, folks, thanks for coming to join us. Special thanks to our supporters on here. We do appreciate everything they've done, as well as the 30-plus people that hung out with us for most of the night. So we will be back with a Friday night fight. I think we are going to see, let me throw that up. I think we are going to see on Friday night fights this week actually two heavies squaring off, not in the same list, but I think we do have an ATST versus Tank. So look forward to that on Friday night fights. We may have a bonus game. I'm not 100% sure. If not, we may just have an 800-point game on the side that I can kind of report on. So please join us at 7 p.m. Central Time for Friday night fights. So have a good night, everyone, and we'll catch you guys on Friday.
See you Friday.
Say fresh cheese bag.